we have a Casio keyboard here in the man cave. And I think John Legend played on this keyboard when he came into our man cave, the old man cave here. I think I can kick up some drums here somewhere. Here, let me see if I know what I'm doing. Oh yeah, yeah. I know good music. I can't play good music. That's it. That's all I got for you. But I can learn.
30 seconds.
I mean, with these hands, some of the best hands in Milford, I should be able to figure this out. Just to, like that, like that's what I really wanted to do. But like
15. And 10. 5.
Coming up, you'll hear from Tony Baselli, Hall of Fame finalist the last couple of years. He thought he was going to die. He came down with coronavirus, and he's just starting his road to recovery, and Tony will join us coming up. I text back and forth with him over the weekend, and he seems to be doing a whole lot better. We would have had the Masters coming up this week. We would have had the title game, college basketball, coming up tonight. We would have been ending the NBA regular season, and we would have the first week in baseball. Yep, you could make a case this is the best time of the year sports-wise. And sometimes we overinflate the importance of sports. You know, after all, they're just games. But when it comes to the coronavirus, sports seems to be playing a vital role. And for many people, the Utah Jazz center Rudy Gobert testing positive, you know, that got a lot of people's attention. You know, getting pulled from the court before a game, that made the virus real. And it's hard to believe that was almost a month ago. It feels like a lifetime. And this weekend, the topic of sports returning came up when the president did a conference call with all the major commissioners. And things are changing day to day, almost hour to hour. And I don't know when we get sports back. I hate when we put these deadlines or time frames for this because we don't know. And it kind of creates this false hope. And there's no reason to be rushing back for this. I'd love a deadline for the coronavirus. I don't need a deadline. I don't need a time frame on when the NFL season will start. Will it start? Baseball, NBA. I got to get back to normalcy, but normalcy starts not with sports, but with the coronavirus. And look, we miss sports. We want them back. More importantly, we need to be safe when they come back. So you can't rush this as much as we want to, as much as we feel like we need to, even the NFL draft. I think that what's going to happen over the next 2 weeks, certainly in the New York area, will put the draft in jeopardy of going off on time in late April. I really believe so. And we'll talk to Albert Breer, a Sports Illustrator, covers the NFL, because I heard from a source over the weekend who said there will be, and there already is, internal pressure to move this, to postpone it, move it back a couple of weeks. Maybe then we got a better understanding of what's going on, and maybe you can help these teams do their job correctly. Here's some things that were brought up to me by a source. Now, I had two sources, one who is an NFL scout and one who is a former TV executive. And they talked about how can you do the draft if, even the hosts are probably going to be at home. And then you're going to have your scouts, they're not going to be in the war room. And then you're going to have somebody who's going to be calling in the pick. Are you going to be able to talk to everybody? And are you going to have to extend the first round, the amount of time in between picks? I mean, these are all things that are on the table right now. They're discussing, from what I was told, a 10-game schedule, 12-game schedule, 14-game schedule, just in case this doesn't come off on time. But the draft, it's going to go off as scheduled, April 23rd, 24th, 25th. And I think that there's going to be some real pressure here over the next 7 to 10 days that maybe they postpone it. Put it back in the middle of May. And, we have modern technology, but you still have to be able to try to figure this out. You almost have to have a rehearsal draft. And this is what I was told one team was going to do a rehearsal draft of, okay, let's decide who we're taking. They do a mock draft. They get to where they are in the draft, and then they go, okay, everybody weigh in. Now we get the pick in. But I think you're going to see maybe a little extra time for the first round with these picks and maybe the subsequent rounds as well. But just some of the things that are being discussed about the draft and about the season itself. First of all, Tony, let me give the full introduction. A guy who one day will be in the Hall of Fame, if I have any say in this, and the former Jags offensive lineman, analyst for Thursday Night Football in Westwood One, joining us on the program. How are you feeling?
Good, Dan. Before I talk about this corona, wasn't Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Bill Walton both better than Michael Jordan in college?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure. I thought so, too.
Thank you, Tony.
Anyways, I'm doing better every day and getting my strength back. My lungs are still a little bit shady in the sense of I'm not gasping for air. I can breathe and everything, but I get tired quickly. So that's probably going to be the last thing that comes back.
When did you realize something was wrong?
Probably March 17th, the night of the 16th, but really the 17th, I started getting I felt like a head cold. And I honestly thought it was just some allergies, no big deal. Took my temperature just because of this COVID thing going on, making sure, I didn't have a fever or anything. I didn't. I woke up Wednesday morning and I felt pretty lousy and felt like the flu almost. And I took my temperature, had a fever, and then I started thinking, okay, this is interesting. And about an hour later, I got a phone call from a friend of mine saying, hey, last Thursday, we were around somebody who has tested positive since. And so I took a test, went to Mayo, my doc at Mayo, took a test and found out the next Friday, I think was probably like the 18th or whatever, 19th of March, that I was positive. And then the kind of the journey began at that point.
What did you do next?
I'll be honest with you, Dan, I didn't think much of it. Both my wife and I were positive because we were at the same event. She felt fine. I felt like I had the flu. And I said, I'm 47. I'm healthy. I have no underlying, health conditions. I'll be fine. I figured by Sunday I'd be up and going. I actually talked to a buddy of mine who had been exposed as well and ended up not having any issues. And we said, by Sunday we'll be able to, hook up and we'll get together, just at one of our houses. And by Sunday night I was, I thought I'd feel a little bit better, but then come about Monday night, Tuesday, I really started going downhill fast and ended up going to the hospital on that Wednesday.
When did you realize when you were in the hospital that this is really serious? I don't know if you felt it was life-threatening, but did you feel like it was?
Yeah. And so I woke up that Wednesday morning and knew that something was not right and it was going bad because I was wheezing and I was having a harder time to catch my breath. And so I called the doc. He said, hey, go to the emergency room. And I'll be honest, when I went to the emergency room, I thought I was just going to get some fluids and some medicine and I'd be back home. In fact, my daughter dropped me off and I told her, I said, I'll call you to come pick me up when I'm done. And I went in there and they took x-rays of my chest and the pulmonologist came in and said, hey, listen, we're putting you in the ICU. And I think at that point I was like, wait a second, ICU? Yeah. And I said, my response to him says, I don't want to go. And he says, well, you need to be on oxygen. You need to be watched very closely and we need to get these drugs in you. And that's when it got, real. Like this is, this could go either way. And the doctor basically said, we don't know where this is going to go. We're going to do our best. It wasn't like, your typical doctor visit where he says, hey, we got this. Everything's going to be fine. You'll be okay. It was, we're going to see where this goes. We're going to give you drugs. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to get you on oxygen. And there were moments in the ICU when I'm laying there and I'm thinking, is this it? Is this the way you go? And it was some scary moments because you're by yourself. Your family can't come see you. The only people who are allowed in the room are the the healthcare workers who are amazing people that are coming in all their protective outfits and everything else. But other than that, you're by yourself. So there were some moments where you question, and because you don't know which way it's going to go. Thankfully, day 3 in the ICU, I started heading in the right direction and got better pretty quick from that point on.
And that loneliness, that isolation, and this is what I have a friend who works in ER in a Houston hospital, and they said you can just see the panic in the patients because they don't know, and we don't know either. And you're just you're there with your thoughts there, and that can does damage to your psyche because then you're your own worst enemy.
Yeah, and I think the two things you said. One is you're by yourself and your mind starts running. And then two, these healthcare workers are amazing, but they're also honest. I mean, they don't sit there and say everything's fine. I mean, they came in and said, we're going to do everything we can, but we got to see where this goes. We just don't know yet. Yeah. And those things put together are really scary. And this is where, I'm thankful for my faith. You really, because I didn't know where else to turn. I had nowhere else to turn. And you just pray, you hope, the other people out there who love you are praying for you. And that's where I tried to focus on, because there was moments I could feel my mind starting to run away in the wrong direction. You feel the anxiety come in, and you just, the way I thought it was knowing that my family was praying for me and that, my faith in God, and you just at that point are believing and hoping for the best. And that's all you can do.
He's Tony Baselli, former Jags offensive lineman, 5-time Pro Bowler, and lead analyst Thursday Night Football in Westwood One. And then you start to think, not to put thoughts in your mind, but you hear other people who have been in this situation. They say, is this how I'm going to die? Like, am I going to die right here? I'm going to be alone in a bed, and my daughter and my wife are not going to be around. Is this the way I go?
No, you're not putting thoughts in my head, because that thought went through my head multiple times laying in the ICU. And I just couldn't imagine it. I'm like, this can't be it. There's no way.
Well, plus the football mentality in you is like...
you fight. You just fight at that point.
But were you in denial at any point where
Probably.
you go, hey, I'm Tony Baselli. This doesn't hurt me?
No, I wasn't that this doesn't hurt me, because it was hurting me, and I was down and out. But I was just, at that point, I was really trusting in my faith and in the medical workers, Dan, I'll be honest with you, that these doctors were the best. I mean, I was at a great hospital at Mayo. They were caring for me. The nurses were amazing. And I was just like, this is going to work. And you just have to believe, because because the other thought of it, the other side of that, and I fought not to go down that path, is I'm not going to make it. I'm going to die here by myself. And the add to the scariness is, that there's people down the hall that are dying.
Yeah.
That are in the ICU with you that are dying. And you're laying there and just saying, I got to just keep fighting. I got to keep on believing, and just hope that what the doctors are doing is going to work.
I appreciate you telling this story, because I'm sure when this first broke and somebody leaked that you had tested positive, there's this invasion of privacy that you feel. But we need, unfortunately, we need faces and voices and names attached to this, just so we get people's attention. But if you were going to do a PSA for this audience, just to let them know what this is and what to do, what would you say?
Yeah, I'd say it's real. This is not, people aren't over dramatizing this. This is a real virus that will mess you up if you get it. Now, the odds are that if you're my age or younger or even a little bit older and you're healthy, that, the odds are you're going to be okay. And it'll be a minor cold or flu, and you'll never even go to the hospital. But there's a chance you're going to have, like me, and a chance even you're going to have worse than me. And if you want to roll the dice on your own life, that's your business. But now is a time to think about other people, because there are the elderly, there's people with underlying medical conditions, compromised immune systems that can't fight this. And we need to be thinking about everybody else right now. And it's difficult because people are losing jobs, and that is awful. And that's where we got to listen to these medical healthcare experts. And hopefully we can get through this over the next month. We can get to their side and start trying to get back to some normal life activity. But if we don't take this serious, it's not just you got to worry about. I think we have to worry about our neighbors and the people around us. I think it's really a time we need to think of not just ourselves, but everyone else around us.
How's your wife doing?
She she's great. She's way tougher than I am. She never even got a fever. She lost her taste and smell. That was her big thing, and she was tired. And she looks at me like I'm soft because she looked at the virus and just said, "Get out of here." And here I am in the ICU, big tough football player. So, but that's the crazy thing, Dan. You don't know how it's going to affect you. Two people got it at the same place. We were together. One, both 47, both healthy, no issues. She has it mild, comes through it, no issues. I'm gasping for air, having to go to the ICU. I mean, so you just don't know, and this is why we have to take it really seriously until the healthcare experts start learning more about this and start figuring things out.
And I'm worried about, and look, there's other things to worry about, but sports-wise, I'm worried about this draft. It feels like we're trying to shoehorn this into regularly scheduled programming, and let's continue to do this where I don't know what the world's going to be like or our country is going to be like in 7 days or 10 days. Should we be holding the draft when we have it scheduled?
Yeah, I don't have the answer to that, Dan. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I haven't been paying much attention to sports. I'm just trying to get caught up right now. I think overall, what the NFL is trying to do is trying to plan for, like, we're going to play football in September. And I understand why, because at some point, we have to, I worry about this disease, but I also worry about the people out of work and the people that are trying to, provide for their families. And I think all of us, we don't know what the future holds. And I think trying to keep things as normal as possible when we do the social distancing, I get that. But also at the same time, I think we have to be flexible because, like you said, it could change quickly. And if it changes quickly and it goes the wrong direction, I think and I hope leadership will make the right decision because we just don't know where this thing's going. We don't know what next week's going to be like, and we for sure don't know what it's going to be like in August and September.
Once again, thank you for telling your story. I'm sure that it probably was difficult in the beginning to share that, but these are the things that help get people aware and maybe save lives as well.
Well, Dan, you're right, and I was always, I didn't know when I was going to do this, and I was feeling so lousy. I wanted to wait, and you mentioned it got leaked, and I was really disappointed about because people I love found out about it without me telling them. And that bothered me. But after the first time I did an interview, I had my doctor at Mayo who's overseeing me and making sure I get back to 100%. And she said, "Hey, listen, I really want to thank you." And I said, "Why?" And she says, "You don't know what it means to us as healthcare workers, someone telling people, and it's not us telling them, but it's you telling them really how serious this is because we want people to take it serious." And so at that point, I said, "You know what? I'll talk as much as I can then. If it's going to help healthcare workers, it's going to help people have awareness, and so we can get to the other side of this. It's a small thing, but it's the least I can try to do."
Did you wear your Jags jersey to the hospital? Did you look for special treatment, Tony?
Don't make me laugh because I start coughing. It's hard to. I can't get my breath. I did not.
Okay.
Maybe I should have, but I'll tell you, the people at Mayo were amazing, and this is what blew me away. I mean, in the midst of all this stuff that's going on, when you have conversations with God, like, where are you and what's going on? I don't get this. And but you see the love of God and people and these healthcare workers, and what they do is amazing, Dan. Yeah. They come in knowing that this is watching people die from a virus, and without hesitation, they came in and took care of me and everyone else up there. And this is my only contact to humanity of people. And they were amazing, from the doctors, the PAs, the nurses, health techs coming in to take my blood. I mean, they were amazing people, and I cannot say what they mean to me and the courage they showed to help me get through this whole thing.
Well, it's good to talk to you, and we'll talk football the next time.
Let's hope so. Let's hope we get back to some normal activities and we can talk sports here without worrying about this in the near future.
Thank you, Tony. Good to talk to you.
Thanks, Dan.
That's Tony Baselli, former Jags All-Pro. So the coach would put the ball there, and there'd be one guy here and one guy there. So when I saw the XFL where they were doing that, I'm going, "Oh, that brings back bad memory." This would be like, go for a loose ball, and then you'd be like this.
And you whack at each other, right?
Like, what are we doing?
You never get away with that today.
Look look, if I'm an NFL fan, I want to have the draft, and I'm okay with having it in April. I mean, they're banking on the fact that we're desperate to have, some kind of live sporting event. I would want it then. I'm just telling you what I've heard, that I think if the numbers continue to rise with those who contract this, those who die, from what I'm told, there's so much internal pressure because of how this is going to look and feel. The commissioner's probably going to do the draft from his home. I can't imagine he's going into New York City. Or would he drive up to, I think he lives an hour and a half, 2 hours away from ESPN. Would he go up there on campus? They don't know how they can present this, from what I'm told. They don't know that. And I think that's where give everybody a little bit of time. We'll wait for it. We'll consume it. We'll be okay with that. But let's see what happens here in 7 days. And then if we feel like, okay, we can do it, these teams, I'm worried about, somebody hacking into, a Zoom call and saying, in the Lions take, you don't know with this. And that would be my concern. Can everybody do their job? And that's the biggest concern I have, other than what this is going to look like, feel like in 3 weeks. Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter for the Monday Morning Quarterback, also works NBC Sports Boston, who joins us on the program. Albert, what's the state of the draft right now?
Dan, I think almost every team's expecting they're going to have to do it from home. There's a memo that went out last week that basically said that there's going to be one of two things that are going to happen. Either everybody's going to be able to use their team facility, or no one's going to be able to congregate at all, and everybody's going to have to do the draft from home. And I don't know if you've seen these maps, but, the latest map I saw showed that 31 of the 32 teams are under stay-at-home orders now. And so it's really hard to envision a scenario where all 32 teams are going to be allowed by the rules in their state to go into their facilities. So they're going to almost certainly be running the draft from home, and there are a lot of pitfalls that the league and the teams are working through. I mean, it goes all the way down to the internet connection in your house, which I like. Teams in running their meetings now, which all that stuff's happening from home now. Teams are having problems with that. So there's a lot of work to do in the next 2.5 weeks.
I've been mentioning this morning, the last hour and a half, periodically, that a source said there's some internal pressure that, depending what happens over the next 7 to 10 days in our country, that, it might be wise to postpone this until the middle of May. Like, what's the harm in doing something like that? Have you heard anything where they would postpone it a couple of weeks, which, might allow teams to have a war room where they can go into? We don't even know where the commissioner is going to be. Is the commissioner going to handle the draft from his house?
I mean, and that's what's been floated out there. I know, like, the two kind of ideas that they'd been working with. One was the commissioner was going to run the draft from his house. Then the other was that they were going to run the draft out of Bristol, out of ESPN's headquarters, and have simulcast there. And so it could be one, it could be the other, it could be both. But there's definitely, I'll put it this way, there are a lot of general managers and a lot of head coaches that feel right now like everybody's going to be put in a really tough spot if the draft goes off on time. And that's without even getting to their own feelings on how tone deaf it might seem to be doing this as this situation worsens in our country. And so, I know a lot of the general managers who are on this subcommittee have pushed back on the idea of going with the draft on time. And I think that the big pushback on that was, well, what difference does it make? It won't be any different in May or June. And now you can sort of see that swinging back around where, some people are saying, well, what's the rush then? Because teams aren't going to be starting up until July anyway. I mean, the off-season program in all likelihood is going to be wiped out. So, like, if the rookies aren't going to be showing up till the middle of the summer anyway, then why are we in this huge rush to do this while the situation gets so much worse in our country?
I also brought this up. There's a roller coaster. You can see this every year with the draft, certainly with quarterbacks. Jordan Love got all that attention, and then all of a sudden we start to tear him down. Justin Herbert got all that attention. Then we started to nitpick a little bit. Now it's Tua on the clock, and it feels like now people start to slice and dice Tua Tagovailoa because, and we're not talking about the injuries. But I saw this on Bleacher Report with Matt Miller, and he was talking about, scouts were looking at some of the problems with Tua. It happens every year, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and I still think, Dan, the biggest problem with Tua is the medical. And I don't think I think a lot of people are focused on the hip, and that's still an issue, no question. And he's not going to be totally out of the woods on draft day. There's still some complications that could come up with the hip after that. But really, it's the multitude of injuries that teams are worried about. Those 2 ankle surgeries that he had at Alabama, those are new surgeries. So there's really no track record on how those are going to hold up long term. And then you've got just the mass amount of injuries. And, look, like if you want to go back and look at history, Dan, and people look at these injuries and say, well, it's bad luck. The kid could overcome it. History shows us over the last decade that quarterbacks who go in the first round and come into the draft with serious medical history from college almost all get hurt again. Sam Bradford in 10, Jake Locker in 11, Robert Griffin in 12, Marcus Mariota in 15, Carson Wentz in 16, Deshaun Watson in 17, Josh Rosen in 18. All of them had significant injury history in college. All of them got hurt again in the pros. And so teams look at that and say, we like Tua as a player, but can we trust that he's going to be able to stay healthy? And I got to tell you, look at that list, Dan.
Yeah.
Tua's got more history than most of those guys, too. So I still think the medical is a part of it. He's not a perfect prospect, but I can tell you this. The Bama coaches have told NFL people, we believe he's a left-handed Drew Brees. I've got enough NFL people agree with that assessment to make me think that he's very well thought of as a player. Really, the major problem is the medical.
What are the Dolphins going to do? What should and what will the Dolphins do?
Well, I think they'd love to get Joe Burrow, but I don't think it's going to happen. The Bengals have done a lot of relationship building, I'll put it that way, with Joe Burrow. They've got a guy on their team named Sam Hubbard, who is actually a college roommate of Joe Burrow's. Zach Taylor actually had a little bit of a relationship with Joe Burrow's dad for them having recruited the same area a few years ago when Zach Taylor was at the University of Cincinnati. And so I don't think the Bengals are going to move off their spot on this one. So that leaves the Dolphins sitting there at 5, and they did a ton of homework on Tua. I mean, look, the owner, the team president, the GM, they were all at Tua's bowl game, and Tua didn't even play. So that's the amount of research and homework they've done into Tua. But that can also swing the other way, where maybe now they know enough about the medical to feel uncomfortable with it. And so I still think they probably take a quarterback. Do they move to get one? I'm not sure. And I'm telling you, if they had the choice of the 2, I'm not so sure it would be Tua over Justin Herbert right now.
Really?
I'm not positive on that, yeah.
Okay. We're talking to Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter for the MondayMorningQuarterback.com. You start to look at landing spots for Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, Andy Dalton, even Jadeveon Clowney. I mean, it feels like Clowney is going to get paid and he's going to have opportunities here. But let's start with Cam. The market is shrinking rapidly.
Yeah, and this is like the weirdest circumstance, isn't it? Because forever people were looking for quarterbacks and overpaying quarterbacks, overdrafting quarterbacks. Now it's almost like that bubble burst where, the supply actually outweighed the demand this offseason. And that, left Cam and Andy Dalton and Jameis without a seat when the music stopped. So I think part of Cam's problem is absolutely the medical and the circumstance that all teams and players are in right now, where you can't give guys physicals, and teams want to get a look at his right shoulder, and teams want to get a look at his left foot, and they can't do that right now. And so that part of it's a big piece of all of this. And then the other piece of it is, look, Cam's been the centerpiece of every team he's been on for the last 10 years. How would he fit in if he was a little less than that, if he was not that, And so that's a question that I think teams have to sort through with him too. So, my personal feeling is right now he might be, and this sounds crazy, but he may be forced to go somewhere on a 1-year deal to try and rehabilitate his stock a little bit. And, the Chargers seem happy with Tyrod, but if they strike out on getting a quarterback in the draft, maybe they revisit it. New England, if his price came way down, they've got cap issues. Those are the 2. It's hard to find him a home right now because there's no place that can bring him in and say to him, Cam, you're our starting quarterback from day one.
What about Jameis Winston and Andy Dalton?
Yeah, so Jameis to me is the one that, I look at him and it would make sense for him to go kind of the Teddy Bridgewater route, where Teddy, and obviously the circumstances were a little different, but Teddy was coming off the injury and sort of had to reestablish himself as a player and went to a really stable organization with good coaching and benefited from having been in New Orleans for 2 years. So could Jameis do that in, say, a place like a Pittsburgh or a Seattle, or even in New Orleans? Could he go to a place that's got an established starter, good coaching, where he can kind of rehabilitate himself? Just from a perception standpoint for a year. I think that's probably what winds up happening with him. And I had Andy Dalton pegged for the Jaguars just because Jay Gruden's there and they've got a close relationship. And I thought at some point, that would make some sense as a Gardner Minshew insurance policy. But I was told over the last couple of days that the Jags haven't shown a ton of interest in that yet. Now, maybe they will post-draft. But the Jaguars haven't shown a ton of interest in that yet. But I think Dalton will have to find that sort of situation where, sort of like Ryan Tannehill last year, maybe you go to a place where the starter's on shaky ground, you go and you're the good soldier backup, and then if something goes wrong, you step in.
Patriots cutting Cody Kessler means what?
It means I think it means they probably draft one. And I don't think it's necessarily going to be that high. But I think they're of a mindset right now to start throwing darts at that dartboard. They really like Jarrett Stidham. And if you break down the trajectory of Jarrett Stidham, it actually makes some sense that he could be seen as a franchise-type guy who's the number one high school quarterback in the country coming out, had tough circumstances at Baylor, played in an offense that didn't fit him at Auburn. The Patriots viewed him as a distressed asset, a very talented distressed asset for those reasons when they drafted him last year. And he had a good summer last year. So they like him, but they're not going all in on him yet. So I think sort of you remember how Seattle, when Pete Carroll and John Schneider got there, they just started throwing darts at the dartboard. And it was Charlie Whitehurst, and it was Matt Flynn, and it was Tavares Jackson. Eventually they landed Russell Wilson. Yeah. I think that's sort of where the Patriots go right now, where they like Stidham, they give him a shot, but they just kind of keep throwing darts at the dartboard. Good to talk to you, Albert. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate your time as always. Awesome. Thanks, Dan. Stay safe. All right, good stuff. Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter for the Monday Morning Quarterback.com.